The kingdom was falling apart. Jaden had spent most of his life believing the palace walls were unshakable. Even during his father's worst moments, even when advisors argued and nobles whispered behind closed doors, the kingdom had remained standing. Now, for the first time, it felt fragile. Breakable. The rebellion had spread faster than anyone anticipated. Towns in the south had declared support for Lord Oral. Several military outposts had changed allegiance. Merchants refused to send supplies to the capital. And worst of all, the people no longer knew who to trust. Jaden stared through the small cabin window. Rain drummed against the glass. The forest surrounding their hideout was dense enough to conceal them, but every creaking branch made him tense. The prince of the kingdom. Reduced to hiding in a cabin. It would have been laughable if it weren't true. A knock sounded at the door. "Come in." Kiara stepped inside. Unlike Jaden, she looked energized. Exhausted, certainly. But determined. The last few weeks had transformed her from a palace scholar into something else entirely. A leader. "The eastern villages have agreed to support us," she said. Jaden blinked. "Already? They trust you." The words made him uncomfortable. "They shouldn't." Kiara raised an eyebrow. "They absolutely should." Jaden looked away. If they truly knew him. If they knew how afraid he was. If they knew how often he questioned himself. Would they still believe in him? "I've spent my entire life pretending to be the person everyone wanted me to be." Kiara frowned. "What does that mean?" Jaden laughed bitterly. "It means I've never made a decision for myself." Silence filled the room. Rain continued tapping against the roof. "I became the perfect prince because that's what my father expected." He looked down. "I studied politics because the council expected it." His chest tightened. "I prepared to marry for alliances because the kingdom expected it." Kiara watched him carefully. "And what do you expect from yourself?" Jaden didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Or perhaps because he finally did know. He just wasn't ready to say it aloud. That night he couldn't sleep. The past few weeks had been filled with endless uncertainty. But one fear remained greater than all the others. Kelo. No one had seen him since the palace attack. No confirmed reports. No sightings. Nothing. The night had vanished. Some claimed he had escaped. Others believed he had been captured. A few whispered that he was dead. Jaden hated those whispers. He hated how quickly they found him. How easily they settled into his mind during the quiet hours. What if Kelo had died protecting him? What if the last thing he ever said to him had been an order to run? The memory haunted him. Jaden closed his eyes. The image returned immediately. Kelo standing between him and dozens of soldiers. Sword raised and prepared to die. Prepared to sacrifice everything. For him. The thought made his chest ache. He sat up abruptly. Sleep was impossible, so he grabbed his cloak and stepped outside. The rain had stopped. Moonlight filtered through the trees. The forest was silent. Too silent. Jaden wandered along the edge of the camp. The soldiers slept nearby. Scouts rotated through patrol routes. Everything seemed calm. Yet his heart refused to settle. Kelo. The name escaped before he realized it. It was a foolish thing. As though speaking it might somehow summon him. Jaden shook his head. He was losing his mind. Then he heard footsteps. His body immediately tensed. Hand reaching for the dagger at his side. The figure emerged from the darkness. Tall. Broad shoulders. Familiar. Impossible. Jaden froze. The world seemed to stop. The man stepped into the moonlight. A scar crossed his cheek. His dark hair was longer than before. His armor was damaged. But it was him. Kelo. The knight stared back. For a moment neither moved. Neither spoke. Then Kelo smiled. The smallest smile, but it was enough. Enough to shatter weeks of fear. Enough to make Jaden's knees nearly give out. Your Highness. Jaden crossed the distance before thinking. Before remembering he was a prince. Before remembering dignity. And before remembering anything, he grabbed Kelo's shoulders. You're alive. Kelo looked startled. I am. You're alive. The words came out again. Barely a whisper. Kelo's expression softened. I know. For several seconds they simply stood there. Close enough to feel each other's breath. Close enough to notice things they shouldn't. Jaden realized he still hadn't let go. Neither had Kelo. Neither seemed eager to move away. The realization sent warmth rushing through him. Dangerous warmth. The kind he had spent years trying to ignore. Kelo swallowed. You look terrible. Jaden laughed. So do you. Fair. The sound of Kelo's laughter felt strangely precious. Like hearing music after weeks of silence. Jaden hadn't realized how much he missed it. They walked through the forest together. Away from the camp. Away from listening ears. Kelo explained everything. How he had escaped the palace. How he had avoided capture. How he had gathered information on Oral's forces. How he had spent weeks searching for Jaden. You're an idiot. Kelo looked offended. I risked my life. Exactly. The knight sighed. You sound like Kiara. I'll take that as a compliment. Kelo rolled his eyes. For a brief moment things felt normal. Then silence settled between them. A different kind. Heavy. Meaningful. The kind neither knew how to navigate. Jaden stared ahead. You came back. Kelo stopped walking. Of course I did. The answer came too quickly. Too honestly. Jaden looked at him. Moonlight illuminated half of Kelo's face. I wasn't sure. Kelo frowned. Why? Because people leave. Because people choose duty. Because people die. Because loving someone never guarantees they'll stay. Jaden couldn't say any of that. Instead he whispered, the kingdom is falling apart. Kelo's gaze never left him. Then we'll save it. Kelo said, we. A single word, yet it meant everything. Jaden's heart pounded. Kelo. The knight's expression changed. Something vulnerable appeared there. Something usually hidden behind discipline and loyalty. For once, neither prince nor knight seemed able to hide. The distance between them felt impossibly small. Jaden could see every detail. The scar on Kelo's cheek. The tension in his jaw. The uncertainty in his eyes. For a moment he wondered what would happen if he finally spoke. If he stopped pretending. If he admitted the truth he had carried for years. Kelo took a step closer. So did Jaden. Kelo, I. A horn sounded. Sharp. Urgent. Both men froze. Another horn followed. Then another. It was an alarm. Someone was approaching camp. The moment shattered instantly. Duty returned like a blade. Kelo cursed under his breath. Jaden closed his eyes. Of course the kingdom would choose that exact moment to remind them who they were. A prince. A knight. And nothing more. At least for now. The camp exploded into activity. Soldiers rushed between tents. Messengers shouted reports. Scouts arrived moments later breathless. The rebel army is moving. Silence followed, then chaos. Jaden stepped forward. How many? Nearly 10,000. The number hit like a physical blow. 10,000. The final offensive. Oral wasn't waiting anymore. He intended to end everything now. Kiara appeared beside them. Her face pale but determined. So it's happening. Kelo nodded. The final battle. The word settled heavily over the gathering. No one spoke. Because everyone understood what they meant. Victory or ruin. There would be no third option. Jaden looked around at the people gathered before him. Soldiers. Farmers. Merchants. Volunteers. Ordinary people willing to risk everything. For him. For the kingdom. For hope. Something shifted inside him. For years he had lived according to expectations. His father's expectations. The council's expectations. The kingdom's expectations. Always trying to become the person everyone wanted. Never asking what he wanted. Never asking who he truly was. Now he finally knew. If he survived this battle, things would change. No more pretending. No more hiding behind duty. No more sacrificing himself to satisfy other people's plans. He would choose his own future. Jaden straightened. The fear remained. But something stronger rose beside it. Resolve. He climbed onto a nearby wagon. The camp quieted. Hundreds of eyes turned toward him. Waiting. Trusting. Believing. Jaden took a deep breath. I won't lie to you. The crowd fell silent. The days ahead will be difficult. Faces remained fixed on him. We may lose friends. His voice strengthened. We may lose comfort. We may even lose our lives. No one looked away. But we will not lose who we are. The soldiers cheered. Jaden continued. This kingdom belongs to its people. It does not belong to fear. It does not belong to tyrants. The camp erupted. Jaden drew his sword. Moonlight gleamed along the blade. It belongs to us. The roar shook the trees. Everything he had feared was gone. Not because danger had vanished. Because he had finally chosen who he wanted to be. The cheers continued long after he lowered his sword. As soldiers prepared for war. As commanders organized formations. As the camp transformed into an army. Jaden climbed down. Kelo stood waiting nearby. Their eyes met. No words were necessary. Not tonight. There would be time later if they survived. Kelo offered his hand. Jaden accepted it. It was a simple gesture, yet it felt like a promise. One neither was ready to speak aloud. The eastern horizon was beginning to brighten. Dawn approached. And with it, the battle that would decide the fate of the kingdom. Jaden mounted his horse. The army formed ranks behind him. Thousands of soldiers. Thousands of hopes. Thousands of futures. The prince turned toward the rising sun. Toward the battlefield. Toward destiny. Whatever happened next, he would face it as himself. Not the prince others demanded, but the man he had chosen to become. The horn sounded. The army began to move. And Jaden marched toward the final confrontation. The march to the battlefield felt shorter than it should have. Perhaps because Jaden's mind refused to stay in the present. Every step of his horse carried him closer to a fight that would decide everything, yet his thoughts kept drifting elsewhere. To the palace. To his father. To the kingdom he had spent his life preparing to inherit. And, despite every effort to focus on the battle ahead. To Kelo. The knight rode several paces away, speaking with commanders and scouts. Jaden found himself glancing toward him far more often than necessary. As if some irrational part of him feared Kelo might disappear again. The first rays of dawn painted the horizon gold. Ahead, the battlefield stretched across a vast valley. A shallow river cutting through the center. Low hills rising on either side. Perfect terrain for a large-scale battle. Perfect terrain for bloodshed. The sight made Jaden's stomach tighten. Thousands would fight here. Many would never leave. A scout galloped toward them. "Your Highness." Jaden straightened. "What is it?" "The rebel army has arrived." Silence swept through the commanders. The moment had come. No more planning. No more hiding. No more waiting. By mid-morning both armies stood facing one another. The sheer scale was overwhelming. Rows upon rows of soldiers. Banners snapping in the wind. Armor glinting beneath the rising sun. The rebel force outnumbered them. That much was immediately obvious. Oral had gathered supporters from every corner of the kingdom. Mercenaries. Disgruntled nobles. Corrupt officials. Jaden studied the enemy lines. Then he saw him. Lord Oral, mounted on a black horse. Confident and calm. As though victory was already assured. The sight filled Jaden with anger. So much suffering. So much destruction. All because one man believed he deserved a throne. Kelo guided his horse closer. "Nervous?" Jaden laughed softly. "Terrified." "Good." Jaden blinked. "Good?" Kelo nodded. "Only fools aren't afraid before battle." A faint smile tugged at Jaden's lips. Trust Kelo to find comfort in honesty. The knight's expression softened. "We'll get through this." Jaden wished the battle wasn't about to begin. There was still so much left unsaid. The first horn echoed across the valley. Then another. The battle began. Archers released their volleys. Thousands of arrows darkened the sky. The sight was beautiful and horrifying. Moments later they struck. Screams erupted. Men fell. The valley exploded into chaos. Jaden drew his sword. For the kingdom. The loyalist army surged forward. The ground trembled beneath charging horses. Steel crashed against steel. The roar of battle swallowed everything. Training took over. Instinct took over. Jaden barely had time to think. An enemy soldier rushed him. Jaden parried and countered. The man fell. Another attacked. Then another. Everywhere he looked there was movement. Violence. Confusion. Fear. The reality of war. A soldier nearly struck him from behind. Before Jaden could react, Kelo appeared. His blade flashed. The attacker collapsed instantly. Kelo didn't even look back. "Stay alive, Your Highness." Despite everything, Jaden laughed. "You're one to talk." Hours seemed to pass. Though it could only have been minutes. The battle shifted constantly. Neither side gaining a clear advantage. Both refusing to yield. Then disaster struck. A messenger reached Jaden's position. "The western flank is collapsing." Jaden's heart sank. What? The rebels broke through. If the western flank fell completely, they would be surrounded. Everything would unravel. Kelo immediately understood the danger. "I'll take reinforcements." "No." The word escaped before Jaden could stop it. Kelo stared. Jaden realized how desperate he sounded. The knight's expression softened. But only for a second. "Jaden." The use of his name caught him off guard. "You know I have to." Jaden hated that he was right. Hated it. But he nodded. Kelo offered a small smile. Then turned his horse. Within moments he was gone. Riding straight into the fiercest fighting. And for the first time all day, Jaden was afraid. Not for himself. For Kelo. The battle worsened. Reports arrived constantly. Some good. Some terrible. No one knew who was winning, only that both sides were bleeding. Then another messenger appeared. This one looked shaken. "Your Highness." Jaden immediately sensed something was wrong. What happened? The western flank held. Relief surged through him. Only to vanish instantly. But Commander Kelo was injured. Everything stopped. What? He continued fighting. The messenger swallowed. But he was wounded. Jaden felt ice spread through his chest. How badly? Was he alive? Could he still fight? 1,000 questions flooded his mind. None received answers because another horn suddenly sounded. Different from the others. Louder. More commanding. The battlefield seemed to shift. Enemy soldiers moved aside, creating a path. A single rider emerged. Lord Oral. The rebel leader raised his sword. His voice carried surprisingly far. Prince Jaden. The battlefield quieted. Not completely. But enough. Oral pointed directly at him. Come face me. A challenge. One impossible to ignore. The surrounding soldiers watched. Waiting. Jaden knew what this meant. The battle had reached its breaking point. Oral wasn't merely trying to win. He was trying to end everything. Jaden took a slow breath, then dismounted. His commanders protested immediately. He ignored them. The prince stepped forward. Sword in hand. Determination in his eyes. The crowd parted, creating space between them. Two men. Two visions of the kingdom. Two futures. Only one would survive. Oral smiled. You finally look like a king. Jaden tightened his grip on his sword. I'm not fighting for a crown. The older man laughed. No? No. Jaden's gaze hardened. I'm fighting for the people you've hurt. The smile disappeared. At last. The truth. No more speeches. No more politics. Oral attacked first and fast. Far faster than Jaden expected. Their swords collided. The impact sent shockwaves through his arms. The duel had begun. And all around them, the kingdom held its breath. The battlefield smelled of blood, smoke, and wet earth. Kelo had known battlefields his entire life. He had trained on them. Bled on them. Watched men die on them. But this one felt different. Because everything was here. The kingdom. The future. And Jaden. Kelo pressed a hand against his side. Blood soaked through his armor. The wound from earlier hadn't stopped bleeding. Every movement hurt. Every breath burned. But none of it mattered. Not while the battle still raged. Not while Jaden was still fighting. A soldier rushed toward him. Kelo cut him down. Another followed. Then another. The world had become a blur of steel and screams. Yet through it all, his eyes kept searching. searching for one person. And then he found him. At the center of the battlefield. Facing Lord Oral. Alone. Kelo's heart nearly stopped. Lord Oral was dangerous. Not because he was stronger. Not because he was younger. Because he was desperate. Desperate men were often the deadliest. Kelo pushed forward through the chaos. Ignoring the pain in his side. Ignoring the blood running down his armor. Jaden and Oral exchanged blow after blow. Steel rang through the valley. Neither willing to yield. Neither willing to fall. Around them, soldiers slowed. Watching. Waiting. The fate of the kingdom seemed balanced on every strike. Kelo fought his way closer. But he was still too far away. Too many soldiers between them. Too much chaos. Oral suddenly changed tactics. Kelo saw it immediately. A feint. A trap. Jaden blocked the first strike. Exactly as Oral intended. The second strike came from an unexpected angle. Fast and lethal. Kelo's blood turned to ice. Jaden. The prince looked up. Too late. Oral's blade was already descending. Kelo didn't think. Didn't hesitate. Didn't consider the consequences. He ran. The world seemed to slow. Every step hurt. Every breath burned. But none of it mattered. Because there was only one thing in his mind. Protect him. Kelo threw himself between them. The sword pierced his armor. Agony exploded through his body. For a moment he couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't move. Then he heard Jaden's voice. Kelo. The sound alone was enough to keep him standing. Oral looked shocked. As though he couldn't understand why someone would sacrifice himself. Kelo could. Because some people were worth everything. Even your life. Jaden caught him before he could fall. Blood stained the prince's hands. Kelo. The name sounded broken and panicked. Kelo, stay with me. Kelo forced himself to smile. It probably looked terrible. You should see your face. Don't. Jaden's voice cracked. Don't joke right now. Kelo wanted to tell him 100 things. Wanted to finally say everything. But the battle wasn't over. Oral was still standing. Still alive. Still threatening everything. Kelo grabbed Jaden's arm. His voice came out weak. Finish it. Jaden stared at him. For a moment neither moved. Then something changed in the prince's eyes, not anger. Not rage. Just resolve. The kind that could move kingdoms. Jaden carefully lowered him to the ground. Then stood and turned toward Lord Oral. The battlefield fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Oral raised his sword. Trying to recover his confidence. Trying to pretend he still controlled the situation. But Kelo could see the truth. He was losing. He knew it too. Jaden advanced. Slowly. Deliberately. The prince no longer looked uncertain. No longer looked like a young man trying to meet impossible expectations. For the first time. He looked like himself. Oral attacked. Jaden parried. Countered. Pressed forward. Their swords clashed again and again. But now the momentum had changed. The prince fought with absolute certainty. Every movement precise. Every strike meaningful. Oral began retreating. One step. Then another. Then another. The realization spread through the battlefield. The rebellion was losing. The conspiracy was collapsing. Their leader was afraid. Jaden disarmed him with a single powerful strike. Oral's sword spun through the air, landing several feet away. The rebel lord stared, breathing hard. Defeated. Jaden leveled his sword. It's over. For a moment Kelo wondered if Oral would surrender. The man laughed instead. A bitter, broken laugh. You think you've won? Jaden's expression never changed. No. He glanced around the battlefield. At the soldiers. At the kingdom they had all nearly destroyed. We have. The words carried across the valley. Something shifted. Rebel soldiers lowered their weapons until surrender spread through the battlefield like a wave. The war was over. The days that followed passed in fragments. Pain. Healing. Darkness. Light. Voices. Then more darkness. Kelo spent most of it unconscious. Whenever he woke, someone was always nearby. Usually Kiara. Occasionally physicians. Sometimes soldiers, but there was one person he searched for every time. Jaden. The prince was rarely absent for long. Even when responsibilities dragged him away. Even when meetings demanded his attention, that he always returned. Eventually Kelo realized something. Jaden looked more exhausted than anyone. Not physically but emotionally. As though he was carrying years of weight. Years of expectations. Years of pressure. And yet, there was something new in his eyes. Freedom. 3 weeks after the battle, Kelo finally stood again. Barely. But it counted. The kingdom had changed rapidly. The conspiracy was defeated. The rebel leaders had been arrested. The remaining forces had surrendered. Peace negotiations were underway. And much of that success belonged to Kiara. She had become indispensable. Negotiating with nobles. Organizing reconstruction. Preventing further unrest. The kingdom owed her more than it knew. Kelo found her in the palace gardens. You look terrible. She smiled. You sound like Jaden. Kelo frowned. Is that an insult? Probably. For the first time in months, both laughed. The sound felt strange. Kiara's smile softened. He's waiting for you. Kelo's heart immediately understood who she meant. The palace gardens were beautiful in spring. Flowers bloomed everywhere. The air smelled fresh. Peaceful. The exact opposite of the battlefield. Jaden stood near a fountain watching the water and lost in thought. Kelo approached slowly. For a moment neither spoke. Then Jaden turned. Their eyes met. And suddenly Kelo couldn't remember any of the speeches he'd rehearsed. The prince smiled. A real smile. Not the practiced royal one. The smile Kelo loved. The realization hit him instantly. Loved. There it was. The truth he'd spent months avoiding. And judging by Jaden's expression, he wasn't the only one. You nearly died. Kelo winced. Hello to you too. I'm serious. I know. Jaden stepped closer. The distance between them disappeared. For once neither looked away. For once neither hid. I thought I lost you. The confession was quiet. Honest. Raw. Kelo's chest tightened. You didn't. No. Jaden laughed softly. But I almost did. Silence settled around them. Not uncomfortable. Just real. Kelo took a breath. Then another. Gathering courage that somehow felt harder than facing an army. There was something I wanted to tell you. Jaden smiled faintly. Funny. His voice was gentle. So did I. Neither laughed. Because this wasn't a joke. This was years of unsaid words. Months of stolen glances. Months of impossible feelings. Kelo spoke first. Because if he didn't now, he never would. I love you. The words felt terrifying. Liberating. Perfect. Jaden stared at him. For one horrible second Kelo wondered if he'd made a mistake. Then the prince smiled. And every fear vanished. I love you too. Simple. Honest. Everything Kelo had hoped for. Everything he never believed he could have. The future suddenly felt possible. Not because the war was over. Because they no longer had to hide. Jaden reached for his hand. This time neither pretended it was accidental. Neither pretended it meant nothing. Because it meant everything. Several months later, the kingdom gathered in the capital. Citizens filled the streets. Banners decorated every building. Celebrations echoed throughout the city. The future finally felt bright. Jaden stood before the people. The crown of the kingdom resting in his hands. The symbol everyone expected him to wear. The symbol others had planned his entire life around. The crowd waited. The nobles waited. The council waited. Jaden smiled. Then placed the crown upon his head. Not because they wanted him to. Because he chose to. That was the difference. Everything was. He had chosen his future. Chosen his path. Chosen the life he wanted. And standing beside him was the man who had helped him find the courage to do so. His knight. His protector. His equal. His love. As cheers erupted across the city, Jaden reached for his hand. A small gesture. Yet one the entire kingdom could see. For a brief moment, silence swept through the crowd. Then the cheers grew louder. Not everyone understood. Not everyone approved. But many did. And more importantly, Jaden no longer lived for their approval. He lived for truth. For love. For himself. The kingdom had survived. Peace had returned. The future remained uncertain. But for the first time, uncertainty didn't feel frightening. It felt hopeful. Together they looked out over the city they had fought to save. The sun shone brightly above them. The people celebrated below them. And ahead lay a future neither had dared dream possible. Not prince and knight. Not ruler and protector. Just two people choosing each other at last.